They came like a storm. No warning, no mercy. Just dust rising over the horizon, followed by the thunder of hooves and the screams of collapsing cities. To the people of the 13th century, it felt as though the end of the world had arrived on horseback. They called them the Mongols, an unstoppable horde that conquered more land in a single century than the Romans did in 1,000. But behind that terror lay something extraordinary, a masterpiece of strategy, discipline, and genius that reshaped the very idea of empire.
The Mongol Empire began not in splendor, but in blood and survival. In the cold, wind-swept steppes of Central Asia, a boy named Temujin was born into a fractured clan, betrayed, enslaved, and left to starve. His father had been poisoned, his mother forced to raise her children in exile. Temujin grew up with nothing, no wealth, no allies, no home, except an iron will. That boy would one day become Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler, and his rise would rewrite the fate of continents.
But how did a collection of nomadic tribes become the greatest land empire in history? The answer wasn't brute force. It was psychology, precision, and innovation. Genghis Khan understood people as much as he understood war. When he united the Mongol tribes, he broke the chains of clan loyalty, demanding allegiance not to bloodlines, but to ability. Merit, not birth, determined power. For the first time, a poor herder could command an army if he earned it. And what an army it was! The Mongol warriors were born in the saddle. Children learned to ride before they could walk, and every man was a deadly archer. Their bows, small, compact, and made of horn and sinew, could pierce armor from 200 meters away. They moved like ghosts, striking before dawn, disappearing before dusk. While other armies lumbered with heavy infantry, the Mongols could cover up to 100 miles in a day. They turned the steppe into a weapon.
But it wasn't just speed, it was deception. Genghis Khan turned war into theater. His soldiers staged retreats to lure enemies into ambushes, feigned weakness to mask strength, and spread terrifying rumors before battles even began. Cities surrendered out of fear before a single arrow flew. When they didn't, well, the consequences became legends. Entire populations were slaughtered as warnings to others. Submit and live, the Mongols said. Resist and die. It was propaganda at its deadliest, and it worked.
Yet there was method in the madness. To the Mongols, terror wasn't cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was strategy. They didn't have the manpower to hold every city by force, so they used fear as a substitute for numbers. Their reputation galloped ahead of them, breaking empires before their armies even arrived. But here's the twist. Beneath that reputation of savagery, the Mongols were surprisingly pragmatic rulers. Once a city submitted, it often thrived. Religious freedom was guaranteed, trade routes were protected, scholars and artisans were spared and employed. Under Mongol rule, an empire stretched from Korea to Hungary, where a merchant could travel from China to the Mediterranean with a single passport, the paisa, without fear of robbery. For the first time, East and West truly met. Silk, gunpowder, printing, and even ideas about medicine flowed across what would later be called the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace. Ironically, the empire that rose through terror ended up fueling one of the greatest cultural exchanges in human history.
Still, even Genghis Khan's genius couldn't escape mortality. He died in 1227 under mysterious circumstances. Some say from illness, others whisper from a battle wound, and still others claim he was killed by a captive princess who hid a dagger. His burial site remains unknown, lost somewhere in the Mongolian wilderness, hidden as he ordered, his funeral procession killing anyone who crossed their path to keep the secret. Even in death, he was legend.
But the storm didn't end with him. His descendants, Ogedei, Kublai, and Batu Khan, expanded his empire to unimaginable proportions. They crushed the Persian Khwarizms, burned Kiev, annihilated Baghdad, and even reached the gates of Vienna. In China, Kublai Khan became emperor, founding the Yuan dynasty and ruling from Beijing with Confucian advisors. The grandson of a nomadic warlord had achieved something extraordinary.
And yet, the same forces that made the Mongol Empire unstoppable also ensured its downfall. Unity was their strength, but family rivalry was their curse. After Genghis's death, his grandsons quarreled for power, splitting the empire into khanates: the Golden Horde in Russia, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Yuan in China. Each ruled vast lands, but without the central will of their ancestor, they drifted apart.
Still, the Mongol shadow lingered long after their empire fractured. Europe's obsession with reaching China began with stories brought back by travelers like Marco Polo, who served under Kublai Khan. Gunpowder, paper, and navigational tools spread westward, setting the stage for the Renaissance and the Age of Exploration. Even their battle tactics, mobility, discipline, intelligence gathering became blueprints for modern warfare.
It's easy to remember the Mongols as destroyers, the horsemen of apocalypse who left cities in ashes. But the truth is far more complex. They were destroyers and builders, conquerors and connectors. They wielded terror not just as a weapon, but as a language, a way to command a world too vast to rule by sword alone.
And perhaps that's the real legacy of the Mongol Horde. Not just the empire they forged, but the paradox they embodied. That order can rise from chaos, that progress can be born from fear, and that sometimes the most terrifying storm is also the one that clears the path for something new. Because when the hooves finally fell silent and the dust of their conquests settled, one fact remained undeniable: the Mongols had changed the world forever.